Right, let's jump straight into it. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're taking on the role of crash investigators to unravel the incredibly tragic and frankly baffling mystery of China Eastern Airlines flight MU-5735. We're going to look strictly at the flight data, the timeline, and the physical evidence of one of the most shocking aviation disasters in recent memory. No rumors, just facts, to try and make sense of an event that literally left aviation experts all over the world completely stunned.
Okay, to really grasp this, we need to start with a number that just defies all standard aerodynamics: 30,000 feet. A 30,000-foot vertical drop in just 1 minute and 35 seconds. I mean, take a second and actually process that speed. Normally, that's the terminal velocity of a skydiver in free fall. But we are talking about a massive commercial passenger jet filled with people plummeting toward the Earth at a completely unnatural, terrifying speed.
This comparison really highlights just how unheard of this is. You see, commercial planes are built to glide. Even if a plane completely loses all engine power mid-flight, it's designed to glide down safely, usually dropping just a few thousand feet per minute. But flight MU-5735, it literally dropped like a stone. Footage caught from a distance showed the plane in an absolute vertical nosedive, descending at an estimated 10,000 feet per minute. That is just completely off the charts for any kind of standard emergency descent. Part 1. The Fatal Descent, Tracing the Flight Path. So to figure out how this could possibly happen, we have to retrace the timeline from March 21st, 2022. We need to see exactly what the flight data tells us about those final moments. Now, this was supposed to be a totally standard 2-hour trip from Kunming over to Guangzhou. It took off at 1:11 p.m., and the initial climb looked completely normal. For about an hour and 10 minutes, they were just cruising peacefully at 29,000 feet. But then, exactly at 2:20 p.m., something goes disastrously wrong, and the jet begins its catastrophic vertical plunge. Now, this is where it gets incredibly weird. Look at this bizarre little anomaly caught by the flight radar data. During this deadly freefall, the jet actually fought its way back up for a second. Right around 8,000 feet, you see this short ascent, a momentary spike in altitude, before the plane ultimately dives again, tragically crashing into a hillside just under 2 minutes after the whole thing started. This tiny bump in the data is a huge piece of the puzzle. Was it some sort of mechanical surge, or was a pilot in there desperately fighting with everything they had to pull the nose up? Part 2. Clues from the Wreckage. Systematically ruling out nature. Let's look at the physical evidence, and the very first thing investigators always check is the weather. Well, we can immediately cross severe weather off the list. Meteorological data confirms that at 2 p.m. that day, conditions were virtually perfect. It was a mild 30 degrees Celsius, moderate winds, and get this, even though rain was in the forecast for later that night, it hadn't rained a single drop before the crash. Plus, visibility was over 10 miles. The skies were completely clear. So a sudden storm or some freak weather event, that definitely did not cause this. Now, while the weather during the actual crash was fine, it was a totally different story for the rescue operations. Heavy rains just poured down in the days following, which made navigating the thick forests and hills around the crash site a total nightmare for search teams. But despite all that mud and rain, they managed to find something absolutely critical: one of the black boxes. And sure, the outside was pretty banged up from the impact, but reports indicate the vital internal data actually survived and was immediately rushed off to Beijing for some intense analysis. Part 3. Was it an accident? The aerodynamic impossibility. So if the weather was clear, could it just be a mechanical failure? Like, could a standard malfunction cause a modern jet to just fall out of the sky? Well, aviation expert Neil Hansford hits the nail on the head here. He points out that typical mechanical failures, even catastrophic ones, they result in slow descents. Hansford explains that for a plane to drop vertically like this, you'd need something totally unimaginable. We're talking both wings ripping off at the exact same time, a mid-air collision, or getting struck by a missile. Without something extreme like that, a simple mechanical accident is practically impossible. Part 4. The 737 MAX rumors. Separating fact from fiction. Of course, right after the crash, rumors spread like wildfire, and a lot of people immediately blamed the type of airplane. People remembered the tragedies from 2018 and 2019 and started connecting dots that simply weren't there. We really have to separate fact from fiction on this one. You see, the public was confusing two completely different aircraft. The infamous Boeing 737 MAX was the upgraded model with that faulty MCAS software, the system that incorrectly forced the nose down.
But flight MU-5735, that was a Boeing 737-800. That's an older, incredibly reliable plane that's been flying safely for years. And it doesn't even have that MCS software installed. So we can absolutely rule out the software glitch that caused those previous global tragedies.
Part 5, a deliberate act, the darker possibilities. So think about this. If we systematically eliminate the weather, standard mechanical failures, and the plane's software, we are forced to look at a much darker hypothesis about what happened up there at 29,000 feet. U.S. federal aviation investigator Michael Daniel points to the most probable, though really grim, conclusion. Based purely on the aerodynamics of how this plane fell, a vertical nosedive like this points directly to deliberate action, meaning either the pilot crashed the plane on purpose, or someone else forced their way in, seized the controls, and drove the aircraft into the ground. And honestly, history backs up this terrifying theory with a few rare but undeniable precedents. Take Silk Air Flight 185 in Indonesia back in 1997, or Egypt Air Flight 990 over the Atlantic in 1999. Both of these tragic flights featured exactly what we're seeing here, sudden, vertical nosedives. And in both of those historical cases, investigators ultimately concluded that the dives were caused by intentional pilot actions. It's a really chilling parallel, and it's one that experts just can't ignore. Naturally, when answers are scarce and a tragedy is this profound, public panic just breeds conspiracy theories. For instance, theories exploded across Chinese social media blaming the US, trying to tie the crash to geopolitical tensions around the Russia-Ukraine conflict. But as investigators and this explainer, our job is to look past the rumor mill. It's human nature to fill the void with speculation when things don't make sense, but we have to stay grounded and focus strictly on the hard data and the aerodynamic realities. Part 6, the safety of flying. Grounding ourselves in data. Now, I know that facing the reality of a potentially intentional crash is absolutely terrifying. It's so easy to watch an explainer like this and think, nope, there is no way I am ever stepping foot on a plane again. But we really need to zoom out and look at the big picture of commercial aviation. Look at this data. The Boeing 737-800 series, the exact family of the plane that crashed, has a crash rate of 0.07 incidents per 1 million flights. Seriously, let that sink in. 0.07 crashes for every million takeoffs. Even other popular models sit at incredibly low rates. Mathematically speaking, the chances of a crash are microscopic. The huge takeaway I want you to get from this is the concept of statistical safety. The math proves, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that commercial airplanes are still one of the absolute safest ways to travel in the modern world. Things like bad weather crashes or hijackings, they are practically a thing of the past thanks to modern tech and security. The incredibly rare tragedies we do see today are almost entirely limited to highly specific software faults or, unfortunately, deliberate, unimaginable human actions. But your everyday safety on a passenger jet, it remains exceptionally high. And yet, as we wait for the final definitive data to be extracted from that damaged black box in Beijing, we are left to ponder one really haunting question. When a highly reliable plane, flying through perfectly clear skies, inexplicably falls into a vertical dive, what really happened behind the locked door of that cockpit? It's a mystery that only the ongoing investigation can eventually solve, and it's one that will undoubtedly shape the future of aviation. Thanks so much for joining me to explore the facts behind this tragedy. Stay curious, keep questioning the data, and I'll see you in the next explainer.